Hi, my name is Moshe Kindler, and I'm the publisher of The Jewish Link,
Hi, this is Elizabeth Kratz. I'm editor of The Jewish Link.
and you're on the Jewish Link Pitch Meeting podcast. I'm very happy to welcome everyone, to welcome a very special guest to the Jewish Link Pitch Meeting podcast. Elizabeth couldn't be here. I'm here with Michael Feldstein. Okay, Michael Feldstein is a Jewish Link columnist, and he just came out with a book called Meet Me in the Middle, which is collected essays on contemporary Jewish life. Michael, welcome to the Jewish Link Pitch Meeting podcast.
It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, we're really happy to have you. For those who don't know, Michael is from Stanford, and as we were talking, he remembers when we first met, okay? Stanford actually represents the last time I actually thought about being a full-time community rabbi, where I was the runner-up in a probra for the position of Young Israel of Great Neck. And Michael, I think you were on the search committee.
I was on the search committee, and you almost made it. And who knows what could have happened if we would have had the job? I mean, you might not be the Jewish Link publisher right now.
It's true. One of my jokes actually is that I'm a retired rabbi, a little bit young to be retired, but I definitely am no longer in the rabbinic world. And I will say the following: I had a wonderful Shabbos in Stanford. I really like the community.
It's a lovely community. We've been there 41 years, and a lot of special things. And one of the things that I really have enjoyed is being able to tell people in my columns about Stanford, some of the things that are going on. And, I've gotten a lot of positive feedback about that.
Michael, you are someone who loves telling me, I think once every year or so, tell me how much Stanford is growing and growing. I think, which I hope that's continuing. We haven't had that conversation. And you've been a salesman for Stanford, both for Stanford, the community, also for the Jewish Link in Stanford as well.
Yes, absolutely. It is growing. About 13, 14 years ago, I headed a committee called the Committee to Advance Modern Orthodoxy in Stanford. We felt we had all of the bells and whistles that would attract modern Orthodox families, but we just didn't have good PR. So, we made an effort to try to attract more people. It took a while, but it was very successful. And right now, it's really word of mouth. I mean, people are moving in right and left, and the young families are really wonderful. It's really
Which it should only continue. I've also, we'll talk about the book in a second, but you're someone who's long been involved in the broader community. I've always been impressed. I don't think I've ever told you about how the fact that you're able to maintain such close relationships and really be part of two shuls. I don't think anyone's like. I mean, there are people who have memberships in other shuls, but you are a committed member of two shuls. How does that work?
It's not easy, but I'll tell you how it all happened. When we moved to Stanford, and it's been 41 years ago, I lived closer to a Agudat Shalom, and I also kind of was used to more of a Young Israel type minyan. So we used to go to the Young Israel for Shabbos morning, and for Mincha and Marav and Friday night, I'd go to a Agudat Shalom. And once I went to both shuls, I began, getting friendly with people and developed relationships and felt both shuls really deserved our support. And, we became members of both. We felt we didn't have to choose and make a decision for, one shul. And, thank God we were accepted by the majority of people. And I think both shuls have something to offer, and I think that it's important that people don't, rule out a shul just because of certain things. That you can join two shuls and actually support them both and be happy.
The amazing thing is, many people go from shul to shul. What I'm amazed that you've actually you still are committed to both.
Yes,
shuls.
I mean actively involved in both. Adult education, other things. I served as a rabbinic search 3 or 4 times for both shuls. I look. I mean, if you believe in something, and I believe in both shuls. There's no reason why I can't work for both shuls. So thank you for that compliment.
So we're talking to Mr. Stanford, but we're not here to talk about Stanford. We're here to talk about something a little bit different. We're here to talk about Michael's book, which has really come out of You said essays, but the truth is we look at them as columns.
Yes, they're columns, and I would say there are 95 columns in the book, and I'd say probably 90 of them appeared in the Jewish Link at one point in time. There were a few of the early ones that appeared in some other publications, but it really is a Jewish Link book in many respects. It's the various columns that I've written over the last few years, and I've always wanted to write a book. I never felt I had enough time, but then after a couple of years of writing columns, I said, "Hey, I think I have enough for a book." And 386 pages, and here it is. So it's meet me in the middle.
It's beautiful. Actually, before we talk about some of the columns and some of the
Yes.
essays, most of our writers tell us that when they walk to shul or among their social groups, that it changes. If they're writing about, if people, I'm saying it like it changes how they're viewed sometimes within the community. Any change? You are now no longer Michael Feldstein, Stanford Jew. You're also Michael Feldstein, Jewish Link columnist, and people have to know that. Oh, Michael's writing this week. And what's the take on that?
I think it's been overall very, very positive. I think people have felt that I've presented a lot of the things in the Stanford community in a positive way. I think I've gotten a lot of emails from people saying, "Why don't you write about this? Why don't you write about that?" And occasionally I'll get a good idea or two. But to a certain extent, you have to keep your distance and make sure that you're independently making decisions about what you should write about. On the other hand, sometimes it's good to get some input, and B, it's nice to get some compliments from people that they've read it and they've liked it. And by the way, besides Stanford, we have a lot of friends in Teaneck, and I'm just amazed at the readership in Teaneck. I mean, I get emails and calls, and when I'm at a wedding from CT, I saw your column, I liked that, and thanks for writing about that. I was feeling the same way. I mean, that's great. I mean, that's the thing that keeps me going, because sometimes, as you know, when you're it's Sunday night or Monday and you have a deadline and you don't know what to write about, and you say, is this thing worth it? But then you think about the impact that you've had on people, and the fact that they really enjoy your column, and it makes you realize, hey, this is important, this is worth my time, and it definitely has happened that way.
I'm glad you said that, because a lot of our writers report something similar. They just feel like they feel like they're not writing just for themselves. They really are writing
Absolutely.
for a certain audience, and they have a certain sense of achrayut to their audience, which is I didn't need to hear you say it, but I'm glad you did say it, because we certainly feel it. That's so if you want to, we can talk about some of there's 95 columns in the book, in the essays in the book.
Well, I'm not going to talk about all 95, but we'll pick a few.
I know that there are subjects that we're not necessarily going to talk about. I know you lost your daughter, which it's a year and a half now. So
actually, a little less than a year.
Less than a year.
Yeah, so January 2023, and
you wrote a number of columns. Actually, we talked a little bit about, I think, the personal columns sometimes are the most powerful.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, we lost Tova in January. She was 35 years old, and it was very sudden. And I'd say there were at least 3 or 4 columns that I wrote directly about Tova. I reprinted the eulogy I gave. A week later, I did a column on things I learned while sitting Shiva for our daughter, which got a lot of positive response. It was again, a very personal column. In July, when she would have been 36, I wrote a column about Tova and the impact that she had on people. And in general, since then, she's kind of, it was a big loss for us and a big part of our lives. And it's hard when you're writing a column and you're feeling the way you are about a certain subject. It kind of infiltrates into everything that you've written. So, she kind of pops in here and there, and
maybe we'll continue to pop in and out as well, I guess.
I'm sure. I mean, that's something I'm not going to forget very easily. It's I see it as a tribute to her. I actually dedicated the book to her. So hopefully somewhere she's appreciating that.
I'll never forget with that week. You had a column, if you remember, when Tova passed away, and we're at deadline, and the existing column was in the paper. I said, we ripped that column out.
I appreciated that. I remember that.
This was not the right time.
And that's one of the challenges that journalists have in terms of the timing. And actually, I should say, truthfully, you guys do an amazing job in terms of a weekly newspaper that's still timely. I mean, I'm amazed that something that comes out on Thursday, you'll sometimes have stuff that happened on Tuesday, or you'll be able to pull something at the last minute. I mean, that's to me, that's great journalism, because in today's world, I mean, look, print journalism is not the most popular journalism right now. Everything is immediate, everything is online. Thank God in the Orthodox community we have a demand, because of Shabbos, really, for print publication. And so many people read it on Shabbos. But I think people are still used to the fact that news has to be timely, because they're used to getting news immediately from online sources. So the fact that you guys can still be timely and still publish on a weekly basis is very impressive. So kol hakavod on that.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to say a quick example of what you're saying is we're speaking now just a day or two after the big D.C. rally.
Yes.
And
great front page, by the way. I saw it.
Very
dramatic.
We tried, but the point really, since October 7th, we've really blown up the whole front page look of the paper. We added a whole new section which didn't exist anymore. It's actually made production of the paper much more challenging. You're not wrong. This week, for example, just to get the rally stuff into the paper meant that we would have a very late night. It was not an easy. We call it like an early close, late close. It was not an early close, but I felt it was really important. Like, we had to get the rally into the paper this week. We have 8 pages of it in the paper this week.
That's fantastic.
With 2 original pieces. But okay, so it's definitely it's a challenging job. My staff, our staff here is really we work pretty hard.
And you do it well.
No, thank you. So let's talk a little bit about some of some of the other essay topics. You've been pretty broad. I mean, you've gone there's been many, many subjects you've covered. I'd say almost nothing has been out of bounds. I think one essay, one column, I think that, definitely came, was something I remember was Art Scroll. I know you have a love affair with Art Scroll, qualified love affair.
My love affair with Art Scroll. So again, the 2 shuls that I attend, you mentioned the 2 shuls, have the Art Scroll and the Koren Sidders now, as most modern Orthodox shuls do, and but invariably I will always choose the Art Scroll Siddur. And it's not that there's anything I dislike about the Koren Siddur. It's very nice. I love Rabbi Sachs's commentary. The typography is nice. Why do I always gravitate to Art Scroll? So there are basically 3 reasons. The first reason is that I'm used to it. I've been using it for 30 years, 30 plus years, since it was introduced in the mid 1980s. It's familiar to me. Opening the Siddur is like meeting an old friend. I know where the pages are. I can navigate through the prayers easily, and I'm not. Why should I look for something else if I'm comfortable with it?
If you remember when Art Scroll, so you're old enough to remember, Art Scroll's a sea change from what came before. Like the Burn,
absolutely,
they were not easy to read. They were.
Well, that's the second thing I wanted to mention. The typography is phenomenal. I mean, everything flows beautifully. The instructions to various sections of the prayers can be focused on, or easily skipped without feeling like they're an intrusion. I mean, if you want a lesson on how to effectively use type, just go to an Art Scroll Siddur and you'll see it. It's beautiful. And then the third and the final and probably most important reason is that it's user friendly. I grew up with the blue Birnbaum Siddur as many of the people my age did. And it was an adequate Siddur, but there were a few things that always bugged me. The first thing that bugged me was that Barchi Nafshi, which is said 12 times a year, every Rosh Chodesh, was never after the Shir Shel Yom. It was always, you'd always have to go to the Mikveh Shel Shabbos, I mean, why couldn't they, spare a page and put Barclay Nafshi where it belonged?
It's pretty long. Yeah.
I mean, it was crazy. So Art School was the first to do that. And then the other thing I loved that they did is they added the short Torah portions and the Haftorah readings for Rosh Chodesh and the holidays in the back of the siddur. So that way, you didn't even need a chumash on the Chagim and Rosh Chodesh because it was all self-contained. And while I'm complimenting the siddur, I want to say some nice things about the chumash also because I grew up with the Hertz chumash.
Keep in mind that Art School's an advertiser, so we're loving this. Keep going.
You're loving it. All right. Well, these are honest feelings. I mean, and again, I get a little flack from my modern Orthodox friends, but the chumash, the Hertz chumash was, it was adequate. It was fine. But, looking at it now, the translation, it's so old-fashioned and it's so archaic, and the commentary was kind of very academic and wordy. I mean, the beauty of the Art School Chumash is that it's short to the point. The translations are simple in terms of the text, and it's great. And the other thing about the Chumash, which I loved, remember before Art School, if it was a holiday where you read the Megillah?
Yeah, sure.
It wasn't in the Hertz Chumash. You'd have to...
I don't remember that.
Yeah, you'd have to find it somewhere else. You'd either bring your own, book of Megillahs that sometimes they'd have it, It was a pain. It was a really pain in the neck. So what did Art School do? It was smart. What did they do? They put it in the back of the Chumash. So now for all the Megillahs, it's there. And the other thing that I love about the Chumash, the Haftarahs. Now, sometimes, especially around the 3 weeks and after Tisha B'Av, before Rosh Hashanah, the Haftarahs can be really confusing.
Yep.
Art Scroll is amazing. They basically outline every possible configuration of which Haftarah you might say.
Yes, they do.
And I remember before Art Scroll, literally fistfights breaking out in shul as to which Haftarah you should say, and people arguing. But Art Scroll lays it out perfectly, and it's no questions asked. You'll have the answer very easily. Right. Now, in terms of the Gemaras, again, what can you say? It was a monumental accomplishment. And for someone like me whose Hebrew and Aramaic is kind of, not great, let's say mediocre at best, it was really a lifesaver to be able to study Gemara using Art School. And I know the purists feel that, you should struggle when you learn Gemara and it makes learning too easy. I think it's great. I mean, what they've done is made it accessible to the masses. I can tell you without a doubt, without Art School, the Daf Yomi movement would never have taken off. I mean, you would never have had 90,000 people at MetLife Stadium for the last 2 cycles for the Daf Yomi program. It just wouldn't have happened.
I agree.
And,
no way.
God bless them. There is a but. I don't share Art Scroll's Haredi philosophy. I particularly find fault with their biographies of our sages and our Gedolim, and its insistence to kind of whitewash any negative traits that they might have had. But in terms of the Siddur, Chumash, and Gemara, top notch. So, Art Scroll, A+ in my book.
Okay, great. That's good. No, I remember that column, and I certainly remember we discussed it at the time, and no, there's no question. And by the way, they're sensitive to some of those criticisms. I don't know if they're necessarily able to answer, but they are sensitive.
I'd love to speak to to some of the people there. And
I actually thought you did. You never spoke to anyone?
I sent them an email after the article, and I got a very nice email back, but we didn't discuss the short paragraph where I said I took exception to that. But look, they're very proud of the fact that they see that as a positive. I don't. We'll agree to disagree.
I like that. No, for sure. I like that attitude. Sticking to I guess shul life and there was another column about the oft-maligned rabbi's sermon.
Yes. So
you are a fan of the drasha, the sermon as we call it.
I am a big fan of the drasha.
So as a retired rabbi, so am I. Okay, so I believe in the drasha as well, but it's not always so popular today. So
No, and I'm in the minority. I mean, this may sound strange, but I really actually enjoy listening to the rabbi's sermon. And it goes back to even when I was younger. I mean, my friends used to go out for the sermon. I would listen. I mean, I was very fortunate that I've been exposed to several great rabbis who gave great sermons. When I was growing up in West Hempstead, Rabbi Harold Kanatopsky unfortunately died very young at the age of 50. Was a master at the sermon. He gave unbelievable, real Talmud Chacham, and he'd always start his sermons by saying, no Chiddushim today, and then he'd proceed to come up with this brand new twist or angle on the text that was just, amazing. I lived in Teaneck for many years. Rabbi Macy Gordon was a top-notch darshan. I think the best was Rabbi Dr. Norman Lamb. Who's the best at delivering a sermon. I've only been present at his sermons a few times, but they were amazing. But through the magic of the internet, and you may know this, there's a website that has archived all of his sermons going back to the 1950s in their original typewritten form. And the amazing thing about it is that you could see his handwritten notes on the typewriter. This was before the days of word processing. With word processing now, you don't often see the changes that people make. With this, you were able to see what changes he made and appreciate his, the art that he had of delivering a sermon, and they're just magnificent. And then, there's several other masters that I've heard. Obviously, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory. Rabbi J.J. Schachter is amazing. Shlomo Riskin, Rabbi Saul Berman. I mean, these are the people who could really give great sermons. Now, it's interesting with rabbis. There are a lot of rabbis who can give great sermons, but they're not great teachers. And then there's a lot of people who can give great shiurim, but are terrible at giving a sermon. It's a different art. It's a different it's a different skill. But for me, look, I'm not learning in a yeshiva, 8 hours a day. I don't, thank God I go to a few classes. I do some online stuff. Shabbos is a time where I can really hear something, from the rabbi, which I think is meaningful. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention about the sermons is, there's this argument about whether rabbis should bring in current events or not. And, some people feel they should, some people they shouldn't. Personally, I'd rather that they don't. For a rabbi to tell me who to vote for, I don't need that. I tell me if something's kosher or give me a good Devar Torah. I do appreciate someone who's able to take something that happened recently in current events and bring a Torah perspective to it. And there's certain rabbis who do that really well. But, for a rabbi to speak on Shabbos about, their opinion about abortion or gun control or some of the other things that are in the news, I don't need that, and I don't appreciate that either.
Interesting. Do you remember? Have you had any situations in your current rabbis? I feel like they're not. You love your current rabbis.
Yeah, they're great. And look, I'm not going to say anything bad about my current rabbis. I love them both. Have they
ever had drushot sermons that you just felt were missed the mark for you? Or?
Sure. And I'll tell them. I usually tell the rabbis if I really like their sermon or they didn't. They're wonderful rabbis. I don't have a bad word to say about either of the rabbis at our shul. There are probably, better darshans that I've heard, but everybody has their skills, and I particularly appreciate a good sermon, and, I just find that I'm in the minority now among some of my friends and contemporaries who actually they gravitate to the early minyanim to avoid a sermon.
Correct.
It's kind of ironic, but
I thought you told me don't you daven early sometimes also?
Well, I do. I actually frequent all the different minyanim at different times. I like to.
But you need that drasha. You need that sermon.
But I need a drush, or if I'm not getting a drush, I need at least a class or something. You have to have some Torah on Shabbos.
I agree. No, for sure. I never asked you this, but do you learn one-on-one with anyone? Bechavruta with anyone?
I mean, I right now I don't. I do a lot of online learning. I mean, it's so accessible. The YU Torah and Torah Anytime. And there's so many great programs out there. I have my favorites that I like. One of the things that happened during COVID is that I was able to take classes from people who generally weren't giving Zoom classes, who were, away. Mm-hmm. I mean, my wife and I, we're big fans of Erica Brown. And, Erica is very busy, but she was giving, during COVID, she was giving a class on Kohelet from Silver Spring, which was zoomed in, and for 6 months or a year, I forget exactly how long, we were able to hear Erica Brown give a shiur once a week, and then there's some others that I like also, but and then there's some there are one or two classes that I've gone to in live in Stanford.
You ever think about studying for doing anything a little more if you have a little more time, studying for Smicha or
Listen, I would love, once I'm retired, I'd love to take a year off and just learn an yeshiva for a year. I mean, I love learning. I don't think I've really engaged in it as much as I should have. I just unfortunately don't have the time right now, but someday, God willing, I'll be able to do that. Maybe take a year off and study at yeshiva.
I'm going to hold you to that. God willing, let's make that happen.
All right.
So that's all right. So we're still in shul though, and there was another column I think talked about Shavuos, all night learning.
Yeah, all night long. I called it. So I have a confession to make. I don't like Tikkun Leil Shavuot. And
you're not alone, by the way. Not alone.
Oh, really? Well, I never have. I think I'm in the minority, though, and I know it sounds a little bit heretical, but I really see nothing positive about trying to keep my eyes open at 3 a.m. while listening to a shiur and then dozing off, at 5 a.m. during davening.
You never heard the line that there's nothing as geschmack as good as the sleep of Torah, sleeping while learning?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I think the first time I stayed up all night was in college. It was kind of cool to do it, and but I remember at some point in the middle of the night I fell asleep in the corner of the room and I missed most of the learning and all of the davening. I just fell asleep. I guess I need my sleep, but what I do instead, which I think is valuable, is I always attend the first session of the Tikkun, which is about 11 p.m. to be Yotzei. And then what I do is I go back home and go to sleep. Shavuos also always comes out at a time when the days are very long. So I have plenty of time during the day, after lunch and before mincha, to, take a class, do some Torah learning on my own. So there's plenty of time to do Torah learning during Shavuos, during waking hours, so without falling asleep. So that's that's kind of my take on Shavuot. I will say, from a marketing perspective, and I'm a marketer, as you know,
yes. And a good one.
I greatly admire the Tikkun Leil Shavuot program because it has brought an enormous number of people to shul to go learn Torah who otherwise wouldn't be attending shiurim. And I don't know if it's the food in between the shiurim. I mean, good at Shalom now, they have sushi, at 3 a.m. God bless. I mean, it's a big attraction. Or maybe it's avoiding the long Yom Tov davening the next day that brings people. But clearly, from a marketing standpoint, they've done a great job. And even, I don't know if you've noticed, even at conservative and reform shuls now, they've kind of embraced the idea. They have, Tikkun Leil Shavuot programs, so it's kind of interesting.
I think I just want to interrupt it. That makes sense from a marketing perspective. Asking people to do sometimes more than even sometimes extreme. Right. The extreme as sometimes is what brings people in. So.
Yeah. I think you're right. I'm not again trying to understand why I don't like it again. But besides the sleep issue, there's a lot of mystical qualities behind the whole Tikkun Leil Shavuot program, and I'm generally a rationalist. According to the Kabbalists, at midnight the heavens are supposed to open and look favorably upon the prayers of those who are remaining awake. I've always thought, if you fall asleep in the middle of the night, do you still get judged favorably? In other words, is the intention there, or do you have to actually stay awake? I don't know.
Well, remember, you're a rationalist.
Yes, I'm a rationalist, so I'm not sure what the answer is there. But yeah, not a fan of Tikkun Leil Shavuot, and you said you weren't either. Yeah,
I've been having the last few years. I remember, I was able to do all-nighters. I had no problem with.
Right,
I do plenty.
right,
I actually just did one this week. I attended the Nate's Minyan at the White House. So we basically had a barbecue at 12 a.m.
Right.
And then we took the bus down at 1 to get to D.C. to the White House, where we davened with 2,000 plus other people.
Wow.
So basically, on Monday night, I did an all-night. We did not sleep on the bus. It was so. The answer is I'm not as opposed to it, but I also do need my sleep, and I have not been staying up as
Yeah.
But I get you. I want you to know. I think any Orthodox person, any person who goes to shul feels the same as you. It's very, very hard to be functioning during that
Yeah.
Shemona Esrei. I think a lot of people will justify it and say, is it really all that much different than my regular Shemona Esrei? Meaning, I'm
Well,
davening.
for me it is. I mean, I don't know about
I
anybody
think
else.
qualitatively the answer is 100% is. But I think I think actually there's we talk about rational versus non-rational, a little bit mystical. I think a lot of people feel like, yes, I don't really understand the power of Tikkun Leil Shavuos, but there's something there. It's worth it for me to be a zombie for the next day. There's something. There's a koach, a power to it. Hard to define, hard to really make tangible. But I think that's why the majority. That's why you say you're in the minority. I think the majority kind of, who, by the way, don't feel physically any less than you. We'll say, hey, I'll push. I'll make it to 6, 7 a.m. and then go to sleep. So
Right.
that's what I've concluded. I don't know if I'm right.
Okay.
So, okay. Whew. Okay. So we're done with Shavuos, and there's a column that you wrote that we put on I think it was your first front page piece.
Yes,
Okay.
it was. I remember it well.
And this is a column that I actually got a little scarred from. So this was about
You and me both.
So this is about really someone who's trying to make it in the NBA. Okay, about a Yeshiva University graduate by the name of Ryan Terrell.
Yep.
Okay, and you wrote a column, and I'm trying to remember, by the way, why we put it on the cover. I felt like it was we wrote it, I think, as he announced the fact. I think he wanted to go to the NBA. I think that was and he was a star Division III ball player. And you wrote about his, Shabbos observance or not, and you are basically an unabashed fan of Ryan Terrell, and I want to hear you talk to him, but we got some negative feedback. Go for it, Michael. Tell us about that.
So the title of the column was Ryan Terrell and the Challenge of Modern Orthodoxy. I do want to say something that I didn't know before I wrote the column. After the article was published, I did find out that Ryan Terrell asked a rabbi for psak as to whether he could play basketball on Shabbos, and the rabbi told him that as long as he was walking to the arena and observing all the other elements of Shabbos, he would be allowed to do that. And I think that's important. In the article, I said I didn't know whether he asked a posek or not, and I did find out that he did.
But that wasn't the thrust of the article.
That wasn't the thrust of the article. Basically, the thrust of the article, the criticisms I got was that I was making Ryan Terrell into a hero, and I was saying how wonderful it is that he, was able to play basketball on Shabbos. And that really wasn't the point. I was trying to make 2 points in the article. One was that what Ryan Terrell was doing was trying to navigate the difficult challenges that we all have in terms of our professional lives and being halakhically observant. And a lot of people don't have the challenges that he had in terms of playing basketball, but I gave some examples of some of the things that, we might face professionally in our lives. For example, I know some friends of mine who had a late Friday afternoon meeting at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock during the winter, and it had to run over into Shabbos, and they had to make a decision as to whether that meeting was important enough to go to or not. And some people said, okay, you know what, I'm going to go to the meeting, I'm not going to write, I'm not going to do anything, and then I'm just going to walk home. These are people who live in Manhattan. So again, is it ideal? Probably not, but are they doing the same thing in terms of navigating their professional career with halacha? Yes. I know students who are at secular colleges who on Shmini Atzeres decided to attend classes. Again, not writing any notes and not doing any malacha, but attending classes because they felt that they've missed, 5 days already for Sukkot, Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur, and they just couldn't afford to miss any days. Is it ideal? No. Is it another example of people navigating their professional or academic lives with halacha? Yes. So, I know another person who went to a conference over Shabbos. Again, not doing any malacha during Shabbos, keeping kosher, but, going to the conference because he felt it was important for his professional career. These are all examples of how we, navigate, as modern Orthodox Jews. And I think Ryan Terrell was doing the same thing. The other thing that I think that Ryan Terrell did, which I think was important, when I was in grade school, I was a huge baseball fan, like many of us. And, I had a dream of becoming a professional baseball player. And unfortunately, those hopes were very quickly dashed by my parents because I was told that there was no way a baseball player could be Shomer Shabbos and compete in the big leagues. And forget the fact that the odds of, that my skills weren't there, but,
Still hasn't happened, by the way.
But, it wasn't even a remote possibility if I was going to be remaining Shomer Shabbos. I think what Ryan Terrell has done, and it's not only sports, but it's other professions like the arts and some other professions that were kind of closed out to Orthodox Jews, is made it possible for kids to say, you know what, maybe there's a way for me to realize my dream and become a professional athlete or a musician or another career that, has kind of been off limits to Shomer Shabbos people. And maybe there's a way for me to figure it all out. So those were the 2 points that I wanted to make in the article, and I felt I was kind of misunderstood in that I was kind of advocating, for someone to be Machal Shabbos, and that's not what I was doing.
Happens to be so. Just reviewing the piece that you wrote in my head.
Yes.
You explained both sides. Okay. And
yes, I did.
And you came very clearly down in the last paragraph. You're basically saying is that I, recognizing all this, I'm still a fan of, meaning you said at the end, I think what kind of got you a little the controversy really, because you basically said is I'm pro Ryan Terrell, meaning I'm pro what he's doing. I think that's where, and I want you to know that we, the Jewish Link, I got heat from it. Rav Shechter actually even spoke specifically about your piece. I was comfortable with the piece because I liked the fact you balanced both sides, and I was okay with, kind of with your second point about, looking up to proudly Jewish, ball players, professional players. There's a value to that.
By the way, Ryan Terrell has spoken at the day schools in Cleveland and in Detroit, and the kids, he's someone that they can admire and say, you know what, he wears a yarmulke on the court. Mm-hmm. There's someone who's kind of made it in the sports world who I can root for, and he's proud to be Jewish, and there's some value to that.
Right. That's right. Yeah. By the way, no, I don't think anyone had any issue with that. The question was whether you were going more than that. Maybe you're saying it's not just about proud that he's Jewish, whether we're proud that he's Jewish and one of us, so to speak. Mm-hmm. that he's keeping. I'm just saying that was a. And by the way, that issue, that was a touchy issue. We got a lot of negative feedback. Some
and
positive.
I got a lot of emails saying they were not happy with it. I got some support also. So it's interesting because I didn't think that column would be as controversial as it was. Sometimes
they never are.
Sometimes you're surprised, as you know. And
they never are. But I'm just saying we never. that's actually the craziest thing is that I publish a paper. We have dozens of articles per issue, and the ones that sometimes generate the strongest feelings are the ones. Sometimes, sometimes are the ones that just come out of nowhere. Not really sure, what's going to touch a nerve, what's gonna be so sensitive. It's by the way, it's just being out there, publishing regularly, like you are, like I am, like the Jewish Link does. It's just going to happen. It's just we try our best.
That's all you can do.
No, 100%. That's it.
But thank you for supporting me on that. I do appreciate it because just as an aside, I mean, I've written close to 100 columns for you, and I can only remember one column that you've outright rejected, and only a few where you've kind of made editorial comments saying that maybe you should go in that direction or a different direction, and they were good comments, and I appreciate the fact that you value my own integrity in terms of what I feel is appropriate for an Orthodox Jewish publication, and I also value your editors who sometimes see something that I don't.
And I appreciate that. I will proudly say, Michael, you are one of the columns that I always read.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
But I'm saying is that people often ask how much of the paper I read. When I first started, it was 100%. Now the paper's gotten so big I can't read all of it. I try to read 50% or more. But there are certain columnists that let's just say, I need to read. As we mentioned with Ryan Terrell, you are now in the pantheon of columnists that by that I appreciate that you always send me your column, separately as well. Absolutely. So that way I read it. I just want you to know that I always read it, but now I always read it with a little bit of a sharper eye. Let's just say now that I know you're someone who could get me in trouble, I'm not afraid of saying that. I just read it with more careful eye.
Which is a good segue to the next article that we're going to talk about, the article about why use golden opportunity.
So let's talk about that. So this article we're about to talk about, Michael just published a week or two ago about Yeshiva University's golden opportunity.
Yeah, and this one's not in the book. It came out too late, but let's talk about it.
Well, so the answer, this is a column where I had an input on, meaning I mentioned something to you.
Yes.
I said, careful with how you write this, and tell our listeners, viewers, what you wrote, and if you want, we could even say why, what I mentioned in terms of you pulling back on, and again, this is where I was not functioning as an editor, Michael. I was functioning as a publisher,
right?
Concerned about who I'm publishing. You should know, Michael, when you publish, I'm publishing it also. So
I appreciate that.
That meaning I'm not writing it, but if it's in my paper, and by the way, it bothers me. I can't get away from it. But if the assumption is that if the Jewish Link is publishing it, then the publishers must agree with it. And I actually wish that wasn't always the case. I wish sometimes people could make a separation.
It's hard
between the paper and the columnists.
It's hard.
The New York Times, for example, they publish left wing and they publish right wing, and I actually always, one of the things I failed as a publisher is that I always wanted more point counterpoint. I wanted my right wingers and my left wingers, really in the same space, and we do have it sometimes. But
meet me in the middle.
Meet me in the middle, and I just feel like it's been one of the things I never fully really succeeded is
it's difficult.
That is for sure. Now, so let's talk about the golden opportunity for YU.
Right. So, since the Gaza war started, obviously there's some direct effects that we're all concerned about and that we read about, and but one of the things that I focused on in this article was the possible of an indirect effect, and it was the fact that YU might have a very interesting opportunity now with the increased anti-Semitism that's happening on college campuses, secular college campuses across the country. I mentioned a monograph that Dr. Gil Pearl, a friend of mine and a very thoughtful educator, came out with many years ago. It was kind of controversial. The name of the monograph was A Parent's Guide to Orthodox Assimilation on University Campuses. And in the monograph, he kind of questioned the decision of Orthodox parents who decide to send their kids to secular colleges. He also attempted to push our community to invest more in creating some of the proper resources for our youngsters at secular colleges, both in preparing them better beforehand and also in supporting them while they're there. And after the monograph came out, it created quite a buzz in the modern Orthodox community.
You ascribed. I wasn't sure about that, but you said that you believe that the OU started the JLIC initiative.
It actually was started by Menachem Schrader about a year or two before, but the OU took it over very shortly after that. And I think that this monograph actually was one of the reasons why the JLIC program was created. But in terms of the publication's effect on more enrollment at YU, I think it was minimal. I mean, because the past 2 decades, most of the modern Orthodox parents continued to send their children to secular campuses, with only a very small percentage of high school graduates like at SAR and Frisch and Ramaz sending their kids to Yeshiva University. I mean, they were all kind of in love with the Ivies. And why not? I mean, many of these secular campuses were boasting the kosher kitchens. They had daily minyanim, Shabbos programming, JLIC couples, even Daf Yomi programs at some of them.
Yep.
So, the parents felt very confident that by sending their kids to these schools, not only could they get a solid academic education, but they could also not have the fear of losing them to the fold. So it was kind of the best of both worlds. So what I am theorizing here in this column is that all this just might have come, to a crashing halt because of the current war, and because dozens of universities now, as you know and as you've reported, have been the site of anti-Israel rallies. Students are literally emotionally and physically scared, to show their Judaism, and in some cases, a lot of parents now are seriously asking themselves whether they should be sending their kids to Columbia or Penn and Harvard, and even if their kids are fortunate enough to actually get into these schools. And that's where I think YU and Turo also come in, because I think there's this group of what I call the best and the brightest, who generally was shying away from going to YU, and I think that YU has the opportunity now to attract those students, given what's happening on campus. They always convince some each year. However, based on the discussions I've had with students and high school administrators, YU has had great difficulty in the last couple of decades attracting those students. But I think things are going to be changing. And I actually, after the article appeared, I got an email from the assistant director of admissions at YU, who said,
you didn't tell me that. Yeah.
Who said that they've been flooded with applications from transfer students. They've been received applications from gap year students who had not chosen to go to YU, who are having second thoughts now, and that their applications from high school seniors is up significantly. Their problem now is trying to figure out how to house all these people.
Yep. Those are good problems, by the way.
Those are good problems, and they'll figure it out. But I think, as I said, I think this is really their golden opportunity to attract the students that they've never attracted. Now, going back to your comments when you first read the article, I think you were worried about what YU's reaction was going to be to me saying that they haven't had the ability to attract these students. And
I'll be straight. I felt you were a little bit too critical, meaning of Yeshiva University, and I thought maybe perhaps even overly so, unnecessarily so, or I just didn't think it was. I didn't think it needed to be there.
And I did modify it, and I appreciate the edits, and I think it came out much better. But the ironic thing is when I posted this on social media, as you know, I always post the articles on social media afterwards.
Yes.
I didn't get any criticism from the pro-YU people saying that I was not being unfair to YU, so I guess I did a good job at, making those edits. What I did get criticism on from some people was the anti-YU people who were saying, they still have so many problems. Why would anybody want to support, a school like this? The LGBTQ issue, the other things like that some other people said that this is, going to be a passing fad, and that in a year from now it's going to be much better.
Which is possible, by the way.
Which is possible. I don't think so, but again, I think it's going to be to YU's benefit. But I thought it was interesting that the criticism that I did get was more from the anti-YU people rather than the YU people, which again we might not have thought.
So I want to report to you. So I heard there's open house season going on. So they're actually telling prospective parents that we are being overwhelmed right now. They're also saying like we apply early and often.
Yeah. Listen, like you said, good problems to have.
Those are good problems to have. I mean, the truth is that between you and me, I love Yeshiva University, love Touro. I hope that they're set up to take, in many ways, I'm not sure they can even handle all of the graduates coming out of every, modern Orthodox Yeshiva high school in the country. I think the numbers I used to hear would be, there would be like maybe, I think 5,000 or 6,000 graduates from the the more Torah model, I guess YU centrist, whatever language you want to use, and the schools couldn't handle all of them. They couldn't handle more than, let's say, 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 of them. So meaning they never expected to get everyone. So
right. But I think what I was saying in the article was that the students that they were never able to get in big quantities, at least, were what I call the best and the brightest, and I think some of those people will now choose to go to YU, and that will help their academic reputation also, because if you're, attracting good students, they're going to demand, the kind of academic excellence that Yeshiva University really needs to provide, and so that they can compete with the Ivies academically, in addition to, being a safe place for Orthodox Jews.
100%. Yeah, that's on the one hand, I'm actually I'm hoping, we've run for the last few weeks like a hate on campus section. I'm really hoping that for everyone's sake, I'm hoping that we don't have that.
Look,
it gets
I do
better.
also. I when I wrote the article, I wasn't hoping that this would happen. I'm just saying that it might be something that and by the way, remember that there are sophomores, juniors, and seniors who are Orthodox students who are at the schools now, who are counting on an Orthodox infrastructure to continue with that school, and if it suddenly dries up, that's going to leave those students, in
trouble.
Yeah.
Struggling
So I kind of feel for them also. I don't want that to happen either. It's tricky, and look, there's always going to be some people in the Orthodox community who are going to still want to go to Harvard and Yale and Penn and Columbia and Princeton. I mean, and it's not going to, it's not. I'm not saying it's going to be for everyone. I'm just saying that I think YU has as I said, a golden opportunity. And listen, I'm smart enough not to make predictions. You know what I said about predictions? This is a quote from, it's either Niels Bohr or Yogi Berra. It said, predictions are hard, especially if they're about the future. So I'm not making any predictions at this point as to what will happen, but it will be interesting to see.
Okay. Actually, I never really asked you about your writing process. Like, how planned out are you? Do you have like columns ideas you've written about? I've never. Let's just and also like maybe share with me some of the ideas for future that we're going to be seeing.
So I have a few things, kind of ideas that I haven't developed yet, which I hope to develop for future columns. I tend to like to write about current events, newsworthy stuff, because that's what people are talking about, and that's been obvious over the last 3 or 4 weeks. I've written only about Israel, and that's what's on people's mind. When I take a current event subject, though, I always want to find a new angle. Look, I don't want to just report on something that, or give my opinion on something that everybody else has heard. I want to come up with something unique if it's a current events item that other people haven't handled. So, for example, I mean, it's not in the book. It'll be in this week's issue. I wrote a column, "What Would My Father Have Said?" Yep. And basically, it was a column. I lost my father about 4 years ago, He was very wise and had a very big impact on me, and I used to discuss current events with him, and I, deeply miss doing that. And what I did was I speculated as to, what he would be saying at this point, and I guess part of it is that hoping that what he would have said is what I'm feeling. I don't know that for sure, but that was kind of the point of the column. So it's an interesting twist on a current event subject. The other, column I did, which I thought was a little unique, which was very personal. I don't know if you remember it a few weeks ago. I called it The Power of Prayer. And basically it recounted when, I was a young boy of only 8, 9 years old, but during the 6-Day War, I remember very, very clearly that my teachers in 4th, 5th grade told me that I had to, pray to God that Israel is, is under attack. They need our prayers. So when I came home, it sounded like I even said to Hillam, I really had this conversation with God as a 9-year-old, asking him, as my teachers had asked me to please make sure that Israel survives. And sure enough, 6 days later, not only did they survive, but as you know, we recaptured Jerusalem.
So Hashem answered your young.
And I figured, wow, this is great. Hashem really answered my prayers. Now, since then, of course, I realized that, sometimes, God's answer is no. He doesn't always answer our prayers. He's always listening, but he's sometimes doesn't answer our prayers the way we happen to want it. And again, it was a very personal column, and it kind of related to the prayers that we're all saying now for Israel.
Yep, that's what we're all hoping. Any last words? Any final thoughts about meet me in the middle? I guess we're. So Michael, you're young by my standards. So and you're also writing pretty regularly. So are we looking at meet me in the middle too, or?
Well, another quick couple of years, maybe I'll have another enough for another book. Meanwhile, I hope people will consider buying the book. It's a good book. I was. Oftentimes you don't get a chance to read some of the stuff that you've read, have previous. I always have a new deadline, so I don't bother reading my other past columns. But putting the book together gave me a chance to review it all, and I think many of the columns are very good. I like them. I think I've made a contribution in terms of Jewish life. I think based on the comments I've gotten from many people, I've impacted people. They tell me they feel the same way, it's been an honor and a pleasure to be part of the Jewish Link family and to be able to contribute my ideas each week. So thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to everyone, and God willing, there should be peace in Israel, and the hostages should come home, and we can have some good news for all of us.
Amen. And you're welcome, and thank you for being here, and thank you for writing, and also just being. You're, in many ways, I look at you as a shaliach, as an agent for the Jewish Link in a certain sense in your community. I hope that continues, really happy to have you as part of as a partner and as a friend and as a guide. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us on the Jewish Link Pitch Meeting podcast. If you would like to participate or be in touch with us in any way, please email us at editor@jewishlink.news and follow us and find our podcast wherever you find podcasts.